Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Mayor and Board of Trustees for the Village of Burr Ridge. It is February 12th, which happens to be Lincoln's birthday. And what a day that is for young Alexandra Guzman to be saying the Pledge of Allegiance today. This is pretty neat. And now, she's a third grader at my church, as a matter of fact, St. Isaac Jogues. And according to Mrs. Guzman, Alexandra is excited and nervous about leading the Pledge of Allegiance today. She thanks us for the opportunity and it would be an honor to represent St. Isaac Jogues and Burr Ridge. Here's a short bio. Allie, for short, is a proud third grade student. She's an outstanding student and a role model to her peers. Her favorite subjects are arts, science, and reading. She enjoys Irish dancing and Mulhern Irish School of Dance and swim team at Lifetime Fitness. When she's not dancing or swimming, Allie loves to make slime in her spare time. Okay, I have to expand on that one later. An interesting fact about Allie is that she raised money for the survivors of Hurricane Harvey by setting up a slime stand on her driveway that summer. Houston is very special to us because we have family in Houston. This evening, Allie is accompanied by her family, father, mother, Maurice and Annabelle Guzman, along with her younger sister, Adriana, who also is an outstanding student at St. Isaac Jogues as a first grader. Allie is very honored to represent St. Isaac Jogues and Burr Ridge community this evening. So, Allie, if you'll lead us. Ready? Set?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Evan, may I have roll call, please?
Trustee Francis.
Here.
Trustee Model.
Here.
Trustee Paveza.
Here.
Trustee Mittal.
Here.
Trustee Snyder.
Here.
Trustee Schiappa.
Here.
Mayor Straub.
Here. Next section is for residents' comments. Are there any residents who would like to address the board at this time?
Mark Thomas, 7515 Drew Avenue. I just want to say that I'm really disturbed with some of the actions that have been going on in the village here is regarding the letter that's been sent out regarding a political campaign, and that letter then appearing in political articles. Then we see on TV that campaigns are showing up on the TV, showing that letter, showing our board. It's as if it's being used to help a specific political candidate, and I think that's really wrong. And then I heard that we were looking at litigation against the opposition, I guess you could say. And I can't understand why we would be doing that at the residents' expense. There was nothing to be gained by any of that. And then, just recently, I noticed that we have a big sign in the middle of our parkway. That's our parkways that is maintained by the residents and whatnot. We're never allowed to put any signs out there, any businesses or other entities. And all of a sudden, this sign is allowed. Was that approved by the village to allow that sign?
You wanted to finish with all the complaints first, and then I'll address them all at one time.
And then secondly, then there's was a new sign ordinance that went out that said only one sign of a specific type could be on a parcel of property. And I've noticed that several signs are just lined up along different areas. So, are we the residents? Do we have a political stand in all this? It seems like we're promoting a candidate, and I don't think that's right.
Actually, I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Mark Toma.
Mark Toma, okay. That sort of subject, the purpose of this portion of the meeting, just have you present yourself, present your argument. This will be addressed at the end of the board meeting. But I agree with you on a lot of that stuff. Matter of fact, that was a total mistake having just as a little footnote, the sign in the middle of the parkway. I know who put that there, that it was by accident. That'll be removed as soon as possible. That's one thing. But the rest of the topics we'll be happy to address at the end of the board meeting.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered routine by the village board, will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the agenda. Under minutes, we have a receive and file draft plan commission meeting of February 5th, 2018. Board ordinances, it'd be 6A, approval of an ordinance amending section 8C2 of the Burbridge zoning ordinance to add irrigation installation business with no customers or on premises as a special use in the B2 business district at ZO2 2018, text amendment B2 district special uses. Under B, approval of an ordinance granting special use approvals pursuant to the Burbridge zoning ordinance to permit an irrigation installation business with no customers on premises, as well as outdoor overnight commercial parking in a B2 business district, Z2 at 2018, located at 15W 308 North Frontage Road. Last name is Wilk. Under resolutions, we have 7B, adoption of resolution approving final plat of subdivision Highland Fields subdivision, phase 3B. Under C, adoption of resolution approving the annual publication of the Village of Burbridge zoning map. You'll scroll up, please. Under considerations, 8B, approval of recommendation to award contract for 2017 EAB treatment. Under C, approval of recommendation to ratify emergency purchase of contractual services for water main repairs.
Remove.
Okay, C is removed. Doesn't remind me, I don't have the agenda to write on. In addition, we have 8D, approval of staff recommendation to table consideration of plan commission recommendation to deny sign variations. That's S01 2018. It's located at 16W 260 83rd Street, O'Day. Under E, approval of request for raffle license for St. John of the Cross School and hosting facility license for Chicago Marriott Southwest Burbridge for its fundraising event on March 10th, 2018. F, approval of vendor list in the amount of $395,254.96 for all funds, plus $254,347.47 for payroll, for a grand total of $649,602.43, which includes a special expenditure of $41,166.24 to Detroit Salt Company for 799.5 tons of rock salt, or bulk rock salt. Once again, the items on the consent agenda are 5A, 6A, 6B, 7B, 7C, 8B, C was removed, 8D, 8E, and F. May I have a motion to accept those?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Mytal?
Yes.
Trustee Paveza?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Mayor Straub?
No, I don't get the vote. Actually, I'd like to move, address under considerations, under considerations, discuss 8A first, since it's a shorter topic. The other one will be rather lengthy. So I'd like to have 8A, consideration of amendment to Balick re-subdivision final plat approval to reduce or waive payment in lieu of right-of-way improvements. Balick, 7500, 7504 through Evelyn. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request from the owner of the property at 75th and Drew Avenue for a waiver or reduction of the payment in lieu of right-of-way improvements. The property was re-subdivided in 2017. It's two existing lots, and they reconfigured to keep two lots, but just to reorient the lots to make them more suitable or improved for building homes. Our subdivision ordinance does not distinguish between a re-subdivision and a subdivision. So even if you're, whether you're reconfiguring two lots and keeping it at two lots, or whether you're creating 20 lots out of one, the subdivision improvement requirements in our ordinance are the same. Those requirements include half-street improvement on any adjacent streets that are under-improved, meaning no curb and gutter, and as well as sidewalks on any adjacent streets. So this property owner came to us in 2017 asked to reconfigure the lots. Since it met the definition of a subdivision, they were subject to all the subdivision improvement requirements of the subdivision ordinance. At that time, the owner agreed to payment in lieu of those improvements, but then after doing some engineering estimates, they now have come at this time to ask for a waiver or reduction of those required payments. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions of Doug before? Yeah, additional highlights?
Well, normally I would say that if it was a subdivision, it'd have to pay the fees that have been being paid over all the years. But, I mean, from what I understand, it's two lots, just move the houses around and you're only building two lots. So I don't see it as a subdivision, even though it might fall into that technicality. So I would say that whatever staff feels is the right way to go on something like this would be okay with me.
Okay. Anyone else?
If I'm following Trustee Pavesa, the situation, if he was putting three houses in, it might be a little different. It's two houses, they're trying to make the lots, keeping it the same. If they paid the impact fees the first time, and we're not doing, if staff or some, Evan, et cetera, and come back and state that it's acceptable to them, then I'm okay with it.
And just for clarification, I remember hearing a little bit about this. They're really changing the direction of the lots instead of from east to west, they're going north to south, is it? So they're wider footprints, a little more usable space.
Two long, narrow lots, both with frontage on Drew Avenue, turning them around so you have two rectangular lots with frontage more on Drew Avenue, which makes for better opportunities for building homes.
And the reduced in way of payment in lieu of, that's just right-of-way improvements, what does that include?
That would include 2 to 3 foot widening of the pavement, curb and gutter along the edge of the new pavement, and sidewalks. And that's a standard half-street improvement in the village when we have new subdivisions on under-improved streets.
And there are no sidewalks in this area anyways.
There are no sidewalks, nor do any of the
adjacent
properties have curb and gutter.
And just further clarification. Yes, Trustee Francis?
How much would the sidewalk donation have been for this development?
Based on the property owner's estimate, which hasn't been fully vetted by the village, but is probably close, the sidewalk donation was $15,000 approximately.
Yeah. Any need for the applicant to explain any further?
It's up to you.
Mayor,
No? Okay, yes.
real quick, has there been anything similar like this in the village where we
Surprisingly, I don't recall any subdivisions exactly like this. We did have a recent re-subdivision where they had 2.5 or 2 lots that were undersized, and they got a variation for the lot size, and to re-subdivide, and they did pay these fees, these donations in lieu. It's the only other one that I could think of that was anywhere close to this. Of course, every subdivision in the village has been responsible for these same improvements, but that's usually when they're taking one 20-acre parcel and turning it into 20 lots or 30 lots or whatever.
Any other discussion, any requests for the applicant to make the official explanation? Yes?
Well, I hate to see that pathway donation go away, especially with a pathway fund that's diminished almost to zero. So this donation would provide a lot of maintenance for our current pathway system.
Anybody else?
Has staff had any discussion with them about any kind of consideration, like donation, even if they don't want to go this route, or?
Not really, other than, they expressed the desire to either have it waived or at least reduced. I mean, they were more than willing to pay it until, you can speak for yourself.
Yeah, I guess the thing was, so we submitted a waiver at the time of the subdivision. When the resolution came out, we weren't aware until we went to file the plat of subdivision that there was a cash payment in lieu. We assumed that the waiver was the waiver to the right-of-way improvements. So once we submitted the signed subdivision, that's when we got a call from Mr. Pollock asking for the cash payment that we were not aware of at that time. So that was a miss on our end. We've submitted initial paperwork that would be a requirement. So that's why we've come now for this waiver.
Point of order, I can assume, but he should maybe identify himself.
Oh, sorry. I'm Jovica Balac. I'm part of the owner, and my father, Milan Balac, were co-owners of the lots.
Okay, so, there's no sidewalks right now, and there's no curb and gutter on that street, right?
Right.
I'd say go down the middle. Like Guy, I'd hate to see the sidewalk donations go away, because that's important to the pathway. I'd make a recommendation that at this time we waive curb and gutter, but he has to make the sidewalk donation.
I second that.
I would agree with Trustee Pavesa because I think, if it's a source of revenue that we've availed of in the past, then why should we change it now?
I'm curious, what would that be? Was it 15 or is it more than that?
The sidewalk donation will be approximately $15,000. They submitted a cost estimate. Their engineer prepared a cost estimate. We need to fully review that in greater detail, make sure that number's correct, but it'll be approximately that
If there was
amount.
gutters and everything included, it would be much higher than that, is what you're saying?
Their estimate with curb and gutter was $36,000,
Wow.
which I'm sure is too low, because we did quickly look at those estimates and saw some numbers that were too low.
Okay, well, there's the first motion is to adjust it for the curb, not to include curb and gutter, but to include the sidewalk donation. And there's been a second. Is there any discussion on that?
Guy second.
Pardon me?
Guy seconded.
Yes, I know there's been a second.
I guess I'm curious to ask, are they planning to sell the lots? Are you improving them to sell them or develop a house on there, or what are your plans?
No, and that's kind of our plea here, is that it would really be an unjust burden on us to join the neighborhood. The idea of putting the lots that way is so my father is building on one and I'm building on another. For us to join just two families as part of the community, to have our backyards facing each other as a usable common space between us. That's the whole intention behind this change. And another thing is with the change, and we look on the corner lots of the two subdivision, within 2 blocks, there's 3 other corners that are subdivided that exact same way that already exist in the neighborhood. So we're not doing something that would not change the look of the neighborhood. That would still already exist in certain corners before we would even do it.
And also, you're a Burridge resident now? You live in Burridge at the time?
No, currently not. Currently, my father's renting because he had just sold his house in Indiana, and we're in Lombard now. So we're looking to relocate here.
Okay.
Excuse me, you were not aware of this fee at all when you filled everything and we met with the village and et cetera?
Correct. Our thought was that the waiver was to waive, to have to do the right-of-way improvements. We were not aware that that would be in lieu of a cash payments, something missed by us, obviously.
Can I ask Trustee Francis, I greatly appreciate the sidewalk, et cetera. Would there be a consideration in any way that instead of, it's 15,000 for the sidewalks that we lowered, they're bringing 2 other new individuals to Burr Ridge, they're willing to pay some kind of a fee. Do we have to hit them for maybe what the estimated cost of 15, maybe cut it in half or something so that something's going to the pathway? We're not punishing 2 new village members. Would that be acceptable to you?
I don't think it's a punishment, first of all.
It's not a wrong
It's
terminology.
what
I
every developer
apologize.
pays. And, sure, I'd be willing to reconsider a different number, but we're already reducing it from their estimate of 39,000 to 15. And you want a further reduction, that's possible. But
There's no curb and gutter there now, so that's,
understand, and typically that's what's done. In an area where there is no curb and gutter and there is development that takes place, the money is, donation is accepted in lieu of curb and gutter.
I guess if I was a developer, I'd be aware of these all the time. If I'm an individual and I want my father to build across from me and I come to a village and listen, we're trying to do this, maybe they should have taken an attorney and been advised by whatever.
Right.
In this maybe we made a motion, or Al made the motion, like that we throw it out, maybe we reduce the fees even a little bit more. Maybe a 7,500 or something like that, if that'd be acceptable.
Trustee Scapa?
Then I understand that, we want to make that contribution to the sidewalk fund, but we also have to remember that he's not making more lots, he's not making less lots, he's just moving a line, essentially, is what he's doing. And because of that, he falls into subdivision. So if he wasn't going to do anything, he wouldn't have to pay any fees.
That's right.
So I know, moving a line this way, I understand the predicament that we're in. So I think some sort of contribution to sidewalk would be okay. I mean, if they're amenable to a contribution to.
I guess it depends where that figure comes out, discussed in this meeting, and obviously between the 2 parties would have to be okay with that. Because like I said, it also depends, as you pointed out, if the number becomes, like I said, an undue burden on the cost of us developing our houses on this property, then we have to consider whether or not we even want to proceed with the subdivision, like you were saying, because there's a point of diminishing returns on that.
Always be voted on and then remade with a different scenario.
You came to the board tonight to see if we would waive it, but in the back of your pocket, you had a number that you were willing to pay or willing to live with. So I'd like to know what that number was.
Depends. If you ask that guy, it's a pretty hard zero.
Since, he didn't speak, you did. I'm asking your opinion because Trustee Francis came up with the idea and everyone's trying to be of assistance to you.
Yeah, I think kind of what was suggested is 50% of the sidewalk I thought was actually amenable, just based on the initial numbers we kind of put out and what you were discussing. That seems like something that's reasonable. We understand we are making an improvement to make the lots more buildable, and we are contributing to the neighborhood fund, which I think is great, and I don't think between 2 lots that would be something that'd be detrimental.
It goes back to if Al would let me go in with this motion.
Would anybody?
They can amend their motion if they'd like to.
Yes, I was going
For
to
what?
suggest that. I think what the suggestion here is that since if they did not change the direction of their lots, there would be no fee whatsoever.
I think-
With a fee,
Wouldn't there still be sidewalk fee for new houses?
No,
No?
and since
if
there's,
you subdivide.
and in view of, and having something for the sidewalk and of course ignoring the curb and gutter, the thought is to have an acceptable number for this motion to pass would be 50% of the sidewalk estimate of $7,500 versus $15,000. I would
What would you think about $10,000, Al?
Amended for $10,000.
Second that amendment. So looking back at when this was originally platted, these long bowling alley style lots were developed in this fashion to accommodate wells and septics. Construction methods have changed. This property has been annexed into the village and now it has the benefit of city water and sewer. So now we can reconfigure these lots, and previous lots have been reconfigured to allow for that, because now they don't have to have the big front yards or backyards to accommodate the septic systems. So there's already a benefit that they're receiving because they're coming in at this point now and developing the property as opposed to when it was developed in the 50s and 40s.
Steve?
Mayor, I just want to make one clarification. The property owner indicated they weren't aware of these expenses. It was provided to them in the staff report before the preliminary plat was reviewed.
Always.
And in correspondence, it must have been with the engineer, and I don't remember who it was, that was pointed out early on that was a requirement. So apparently the property owner didn't get the information, but it was put out there as best we could.
Thank you, Doug.
Doug made a great point. Your engineer got the information. I think we go back to our engineer, you were willing to do the 7,500. Trustee Pavesa was at 10,000. It's been seconded by trustee Francis. Consideration is you should accept the 10,000, go back to your engineer, get the 2,500 from him, and call it a day.
Or your attorney, whoever reviewed the
But
document.
that's just my opinion.
Okay.
They're talking about settling it at the 10 between it.
My question is, if we build the houses as they are, there would be no fees.
Correct.
So why are we paying so much money but nobody else is paying on a block? I mean, I can't understand that part. I mean, if we do sidewalks,
You want me to answer that?
get assessed.
Yeah, once, but I'm glad to do it again.
But you guys don't intend to do the sidewalks or any of that.
But you don't pay, nobody else pays because nobody else changed. So if you change,
Yeah, I guess that was the point of bringing up earlier, is there are 3 other examples within a 2-block radius of the exact same
They
thing being
changed
done.
a lot line.
Things that they were done
Got two better
20, 30 years ago
lines.
before we had these subdivision ordinances and.
As trustee Francis said, it's been there for a while.
Correct.
You're getting the benefit of the past.
Yep.
So it's one or the other, so.
And in the end, I mean, we get it, and we know that seems like the logical assumption, and because, you know, why you're changing different, for your lots from one direction to the other, why there'd be a fee incurred, but it's kind of one of the blanket policies that the village has had, that there's a, and any new, and it's any new construction or subdivisions being made, there's that little clause that says it should be a full retail. In this case, they're offering, you know, to try to meet you, you know, almost halfway out of, in a way, you know, kindness, and trying to, you know, the golden rule, trying to, you know, go that way. So it's probably not everything that you wanted, but, you know, certainly closer to what you wanted. So, trustee Model?
And Mayor, I just want to point out, so you're all aware, you know, we do a great job here trying to keep taxes low and run the village really efficiently. And, you know, we need revenue just like any other town does. And you're going to enjoy the beautiful streets and sidewalks and all the wonderful things about Burr Ridge. And we need to fund that in a reasonable manner. And you know, this is one way that we maintain the sidewalks and the parks and everything like that. So, you know, we've done a good job keeping your property taxes low, probably one of the reasons you're coming here. I hope you'll receive the benefit over many, many years.
And we do welcome all of our new residents. Especially families living side by side. That sounds like a really
It's
cool
wonderful.
option for you.
We're excited about it.
And so with that, there's been a motion, the second. Any other discussion?
They did officially amend their motion, is that
They
correct?
did officially amend their motions. And then I'd like to just call a vote.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes,
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Maitel?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Skiappa?
yes.
6-0.
Welcome to Burr Ridge.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Here, I thought that'd be a quick one. Okay, under resolutions, we have 7A, consideration of resolution approving final plat of subdivision of Lakeside Point of Burr Ridge. Doug?
Yes, let me find the plat for everybody to look at. This is a request for final plat approval for the Lakeside Point Planned Unit Development. The board will recall that in 2017, we approved the preliminary PUD. And subsequent to that approval, the developer submitted final engineering plans and final landscaping plans and a final plat. Staff has reviewed those, and although our review is not complete at this time, we have determined that the plans are in substantial compliance and are ready to be reviewed and approved by the village board. Staff report to the Plan Commission, as well as the staff summary for the board and the backup information provided to the board, summarize a lot of different issues, but I believe it's fair to say that there are two primary issues that the developer is asking for your indulgence on. One is a recommendation of the Plan Commission to provide a cul-de-sac turnaround at the end of Commonwealth Avenue. Staff had originally recommended that in the preliminary PUD process, that in lieu of full half-street improvement of Commonwealth as is required by the subdivision code, that we would find it acceptable just to put a cul-de-sac turnaround at the end of that street. And that's for public safety reasons, to allow emergency vehicles, service vehicles, snow plows, as well as motorists to be able to turn around without doing a three-point turn or having to use someone's driveway to turn around. The second issue, and that was a recommendation of the Plan Commission, and the developer's asking that the Board of Trustees waive that requirement, or that recommendation. The second issue is similar, but has to do with sidewalks. By the subdivision ordinance, the developer is responsible for sidewalks on all adjoining sides of any existing streets and two sides of internal streets, new streets that are being created. And the subdivision code states that they either have to provide those sidewalks or pay a donation in lieu of those sidewalks. The developer is providing all of the required sidewalks, with the exception of the required sidewalk on the outside loop of the internal street and on the adjoining side of Commonwealth Avenue. And the Pathway Commission has reviewed this and is recommending that the developer provide a donation in lieu of those improvements. And the developer is asking that the village board waive that required donation. I believe that fairly summarizes the outstanding issues. Certainly if the board has any concerns or questions about any of the other aspects of this development that were raised in the staff reports, I'd be happy to answer those questions at this time. Thank you.
Doug, can you kind of put those in chronological order to discuss, like, for example, the sidewalk on Commonwealth, the turnaround? In what order would you put those?
You mean what order should they be discussed?
Yes. Or however you just read it. Was it the?
Well, I've mentioned the turnaround first.
Okay, turnaround first. And there's no confusion, their staff was recommending in lieu of a turnaround, or is to build a turnaround?
Right, right.
So you're recommending, and that's for a total of what?
Well, our engineer had estimated that cost at approximately $30,000.
And second?
Second issue was the sidewalks that are not, the fee in lieu of the sidewalks that are not being built, and that's the sidewalk along Commonwealth Avenue, and the sidewalk on the outside of the internal street, the second side of the internal street.
So you're talking about Commonwealth Avenue is number one, and what's the staff recommendation for that?
Well, the Pathway Commission has recommended that the fee be paid in lieu of the sidewalk, as is required by the subdivision ordinance.
And then there's a sidewalk along Bridewell? No, that's,
No, sidewalk on the second side of their internal street.
the outer loop of the internal, because they're already providing the sidewalk, you have colored in green on the map I have, along Bridewell, they're already making it.
Right. And they're providing sidewalk on the inside of the
Inside,
proposed street.
right.
I should mention too that they are replacing and extending the pathway along the lake, and that was part of the preliminary PUD approval.
And the fee in lieu of the outer loop of the inner circle, is that the right word for it? But that's not something that's practical to build, is it?
Well, at this point, given the, what's been approved for the subdivision, I would agree that at this point it's not practical to build it. If you built it, it would have to be a carriage walk, meaning a sidewalk right up against the curb. And we prefer not to have carriage walks.
Just points of clarification. Now, trustees, do you have any questions of Doug before the petitioners? Yes?
Doug, did you say that we're going to put the sidewalk in on Bridewell to connect Bridewell to where it ends right now, kind of out of the village center there? I noticed it's in their letter here, they talk about that. So.
No, they're building the sidewalk on their on their frontage of Bridewell only.
Okay. I see, just they're not all the way over to the
But not all the
where
way
it
over,
ends there, and not to where it connects off of 71st Street or whatnot over
Right.
there, correct? Okay.
Well, they do, I mean, the existing sidewalk to the east ends at their property.
It ends right there, okay.
So
yeah.
they'd pick that up, extend it to the west end of their property,
But not all the way to.
not all the way to Burridge Parkway.
Got it.
And that's one of the things that was discussed as possible consideration in lieu of the other fee in lieu of sidewalks that aren't going to be built anyway. Might be a possibility, so. Trustee Snyder?
Doug, at any point in time, do we mention to them in any way, shape, or form we would waive any fees whatsoever? They were aware of the fees at the beginning. We were not going to make any consideration of the fees. We were saying, look, we'll do this for X, but we've not waived any of the fees from the beginning, correct?
Correct.
Has that ever been done before,
To waive fees,
like that?
I mean, other than for this non-subdivision we just talked about where we reduced the fees, I'm not aware of any subdivisions where they've created new lots that we've waived sidewalk or other fees.
So there's been no impact fees ever really waived when it's been into consideration like this?
Not to my knowledge. I don't recall any.
Thank you.
Trustee Malo?
And Doug, McNaughton, I'm familiar with them, but they've done developments in the village before, correct?
Yes.
And they paid the fees at that time as well?
They did 87th and Madison, and in that one, they built the sidewalk and the street improvements rather than pay the fee.
Okay.
And the other subdivisions I think you did were already built, right? Yeah.
Have we approached the gentleman about doing some additional sidewalks somewhere else to keep for the pathway committee instead of a donation like they've done in the past?
We briefly talked about that in a meeting last week, about doing some off-site work in this vicinity. So one of their concerns was making a donation into our general capital fund and sidewalk fund. They don't know that it's benefiting their subdivision or their residents at all. So we had suggested that extending that Bridewell path and sidewalk all the way to Burridge Parkway would benefit the residents of their subdivision. We also mentioned the need for replacing asphalt sidewalks in this area, particularly behind Chasemore, the pathway behind Chasemore subdivision. We have asphalt sidewalks that need to be replaced with concrete because they're in bad shape.
So some of those will also benefit the subdivision.
I believe they would. I believe that they'd benefit the entire neighborhood.
Okay.
In the sense that people go for walks and they like to walk in circles and they like, so any sidewalk in the vicinity is potentially a benefit to a resident of that neighborhood.
That would make for a nice loop
Right.
to go out the subdivision, out the Burridge Parkway, and come all the way around.
Go down around the lake and come back.
Yeah, that's, they probably have more visitors. Yes. Okay, Trustee Mattel?
If we were to just sum up the amount that we are looking to waive or how much we're looking for in donation, what would the dollar amount be for that?
I did a very, very rough estimate, just based on the lineal feet involved, not based on any unique engineering challenges. So this number is going to be low, but I estimated that at a minimum, the fee in lieu of sidewalk would be $100,000.
All right. And I like the idea of having a nice walking path, because as it is, the community is going to be 55 plus, and everyone likes to be fit and walk around, so that would make a lot of sense.
And by the way, Commonwealth, the turnaround is also something that's probably up for debate from or discussion, because I drove down that street today just to see what it was like, and it is a very narrow street, a nice house at the very end of Commonwealth, and they even carve out a little turnaround snow pile for people to turn around using the guy's driveway. Question is, will that resident at the end of Commonwealth prefer to have all the trees dug up and make for an official turnaround or not? So that one thought was to have it maybe even escrowed in the event that the neighbor wants to do it, to have a turnaround or not. It would be used if it was and returned if it wasn't. So that's another variable here in this very interesting puzzle. But I would like to hear from the petitioners, and if you would like to give an overview of what your request is, reasoning, pros and cons.
Good evening. My name is John Berry. I'm with McNaughton Development, 11 South 220 Jackson Street, Burr Ridge. It's sidewalk night tonight in Burr Ridge. So I don't like being on this side of the table. Thanks for having us. We're looking forward to getting started on the development. It's going to be a great development for the village. I think it's going to really add a lot to the village center and the village as a whole.
How big of, just for everyone's education, how big of a development is it? Dollar figure, units, as a reminder?
Sure.
Those might be watching or listening to.
Sure. Yeah, the total parcel is approximately 20 acres. We're proposing to do 40 age-targeted homes. These homes will be either ranches or 2 stories with the master bedroom on the first floor. They'll range anywhere from about 2,400 square feet to about 3,200 square feet. It'll be a maintenance-free development where the homeowners association will take care of all the common area amenities and all the maintenance for the people at least on the outside of the homes. And we're expecting the homes to be priced probably somewhere from the mid-7s for the ranches to the mid-8s for the 2 stories. A little thumbnail sketch of the development.
So in total, this project is going to be what kind of numbers?
My math's not real good. I mean, 44 times 800,000, right? 32 million? Is that about right? So.
Continue.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we maybe talk about Commonwealth first? Our understanding of the preliminary approval was that there were no improvements required on Commonwealth. There was the option of a possible turn lane if it was determined to be necessary as part of the final engineering. We're asking to be exempt from doing the turnaround primarily because we're not impacting the street. All of our access comes off of Bridewell. We have no access points to Commonwealth. Secondarily, Commonwealth, there's a very private nature, Commonwealth. It's a rural spec street. It's wooded along our entire east property line across from the people's homes. The point was made very clearly by the residents when Weekly Homes came in for the development back in spring of 2016 that they liked the private nature of the street. They didn't want to be impacted to this development. In addition to that, at least from what we can tell, the street functions well for these 8 people. There's been no complaints about people turning around in driveways or any, any difficulties with snow plows or garbage trucks or anything like that. The other reason why we really don't want to get into any development along the street is, besides the fact we don't agree with the necessity of it, is we don't want to be subject to the complaints of the residents if they have concerns about construction traffic, tree removal, or any other ancillary damage that could possibly occur when putting in an improvement like this. Moving on to the sidewalks.
Can I interrupt you for a second, John?
Sure.
Paul McNaughton Jr., 11 South 220 Jackson Street, Burr Ridge. Yeah, one other thing too that I think John didn't mention, also maybe we're a little bit concerned because the residents in that area, they did express their concern about keeping the street kind of public-private and not being disturbed during development, is the construction of a turnaround might have an unintended consequence of maybe being a, kind of an unintentional parking area for people that are looking to access the new pathway system that we're putting in. So is that homeowner going to deal with cars that are parked at the end of that turnaround? Just another example of something that, you might be causing an unintended effect by adding this feature.
Regarding the sidewalks, I guess we view the sidewalks or the requirement of sidewalks in Commonwealth in the same light as the improvements in Commonwealth. Again, we're not impacting the street, but overall the full roadway improvements that are typically required under the village ordinance were waived in this instance. So intellectually looking at it, we thought this is the same argument. If the road improvements aren't required, why would the sidewalk requirements? As for the internal sidewalks, they were a great matter of discussion, especially at the Plan Commission and the preliminary review period. In light of the 100-foot setback that we were required to have off of Commonwealth, the only way for us at that time was to get sidewalks on both sides of the street was to propose a carriage walk. We thought the carriage walk was an acceptable method of providing accessibility in the subdivision. In this instance, because the improvements were private, you don't have a lot of traffic. There's only 44 homes, and it's the nature of the street. It's not a high speed design street. However, the compromise at the Plan Commission was to go with more of a traditional looking sidewalk where we'd have curb, green space, and the sidewalk on the one side of the street. So we took that as, okay, that was the compromise, and that's how the plan's going to be approved, and that's the way it's done. So overall, as far as how the subdivision works, we think it works real well for pedestrian traffic. As it was mentioned, we're going to pick up the sidewalk that exists on the east end of our site on Bridewell, and we're going to make that extend that sidewalk across our frontage. We're going to have 2 sidewalks coming in off of Bridewell along our main entry. Crosswalks will be extended across the street. In the inside loop of the street, we'll have a sidewalk all the way. And then we'll have another crosswalk here where we'll pick up this sidewalk where we're doing all the way around the lake. and replacing that all up to this point, and then we'll be extending a new sidewalk to the weir and constructing a bridge over that weir to connect to the south side of the lake. All said, our residents will be able to, our residents and actually all the people to the east of the site, from Frontage Road or Bridewell all the way to the east, will be able to access the village center via sidewalk very easily all the way to the village center. All said, in light of the preliminary approvals, the issues with the connectivity, we think it would be reasonable that the requirement for the turnaround and the sidewalks be waived. We're looking forward to getting started, and hopefully, we're hoping that you agree.
Paul, any final comments?
Yeah, I guess, you know, with the previous petition, us being relatively experienced developers, you might say to yourself, well, these guys should know that there's a fee in lieu of sidewalk ordinance. But I can sit here and tell you honestly, we do not have a line item in our budget for any of these sidewalks, because we figured that there was such extensive talk during the Plan Commission about how we're going to position the internal loop sidewalks or the external loop sidewalks. Originally, as John mentioned, we proposed carriage walks on both sides of the street as a way to satisfy the sidewalk requirement, given our constraints with the site, with the 100-foot on the east side. Ultimately, the village wanted to go with a sidewalk that had a more typical parkway, which we did, but obviously we couldn't match that on the other side of the street because of the constraints that we have. We feel a little bit, I know that there's a code that says that you can pay cash in lieu of sidewalk, or you have to, but we feel like we've been retraded on a little bit because of that situation, and then with respect to Commonwealth, I mean, even in our petition, when we asked for our PUD and all the waivers that we asked for our typical code requirements in our PUD, it says in there no improvements along, or no subdivision improvements along Commonwealth. So we're not installing any improvements along Commonwealth. Why would we get hit with a fee in lieu along Commonwealth? That's kind of the basis for, another basis for our request tonight.
Well, stay up there. Any questions the trustees have of Paul?
Can you show me the sidewalks that we are proposed that are not, you wouldn't do?
The outer loop does not have a sidewalk.
Okay.
And then sidewalk along Commonwealth, which is required with the half-street improvements under the subdivision code. But obviously, we're not doing any improvements to Commonwealth. So we're getting hit with a cash in lieu of sidewalk, which we did not anticipate.
So that sidewalk would be behind those homes.
It would be behind our homes and across the street.
Thank you.
Mr. Model?
You know, I appreciate what you're doing here, and that you're coming to make use of some land here in the village and bring some more folks in the village, and I appreciate as a business person myself where you're coming from, you know, on your project and your budget and stuff. I'm curious, though, you know, $100,000 sounds like a lot here, but if I divide it by 44, it's $2,200 a house. Have you sold houses yet? Are you able to you know, pass that along, or are you you know, what's your opinion on that?
Well, my opinion is there's a lot of components that go into building a subdivision and building a house. And if you took all those components and said you add even $100 to them, those all add up over time. So I don't think that's the right way to look at it. We haven't begun to actively sell houses in the subdivision yet. Honestly, we were waiting to roll out our pricing until we found out what happened tonight, because there are some things being discussed here that will affect our ultimate pricing. But we want to keep the cost as, I mean, we know what percentage of profit we want to make on the homes. That's not going to change. You know, but at the same time, we want to keep the cost of the final product as low as possible for our residents, so that we can get a good start, which is imperative to these bigger developments, to be able to get 4 or 5 under your belt right away and be able to get it started on a good foot. Because if it doesn't,
then you start scrambling a little bit. So, you know, I guess one of the other things that we talked about, or that we didn't talk about, is, like I said, we kind of feel like, all right, we kind of got retraded a little bit, and I know the response is the code, and there is a subdivision code. So I guess the biggest problem for us is not just the money, it's the fact that the sidewalk fund does not necessarily do anything to benefit our particular development. There's some stuff that we could do with that sidewalk money, or a portion of that sidewalk money, on-site, that we would prefer to do on-site, in terms of enhanced landscaping around the pond. We had even discussed as of tonight, doing some sort of gazebo feature in the common area where the paths intersect, you know, like somewhere down here. I think that was our concept, John?
Yeah, that, or we can move it around really anywhere on the site.
Just something that is gonna, if our residents are paying for it, we think it should be something that enhances their experience with the subdivision. I mean, I'd rather put more stone or brick on their house, or put more copper roof on their house, or give them more square footage, or, you know, or like the other ideas that we talked about, enhanced landscaping, a gazebo feature for the common area where people can congregate as they're using the walking path to get to the Burr Ridge Village Center, rather than writing a check to the village and saying, here, this is for your sidewalk fund, use it wherever you want.
And as an option, is that extension from your property line to Burr Ridge Parkway, the sidewalk along Bridewell there, is that an option?
I guess I can't commit to that tonight, because I would want to understand the engineering of that sidewalk a little bit more, what kind of utilities are there, if there's power poles that need to be relocated, what the topography is, which, you know, it could be looked into relatively easily. I wouldn't want it to hold up any sort of vote tonight, but I think we could structure some sort of either-or scenario.
I have a question for Doug. Doug, you said we waived road improvements. I think John was discussing it. We waived road improvements were waived for this subdivision?
In the 2016 weekly proposal and in the 2017 preliminary plat approval for McNaughton, the village board did agree to waive the Commonwealth Street improvements.
Okay.
And at that time, we suggested that, you know, that if those are waived, that we would still like to see the turnaround at the end of the street. And then the staff report indicated that would be taken up in final engineering. I don't know that it was ever discussed at a public meeting, but it was in the written staff reports that way.
As a developer, I understand his constraints for cost and stuff, and the turnaround, if we could have the neighbors didn't want it, that'd be one thing. Turnaround go. The same, Mr. McNaught, same thing on the impact fee with regards to the sidewalks, as Trustee Francis and Pavesa before. Consider if you're gonna, was never taken out in the
Trustee
past.
Snyder, can you talk up a little bit louder, please?
Sorry, in the past, it was never waived before. You know, when you make, hey, maybe we can consider doing this for this, and you had a meeting with Doug and I guess Mayor Straub last week, I would be open to make a motion if the consideration that you go back to them and work it out, connections or whatever with the village. I would waive the turnaround. So I guess we make a motion waiving the turnaround altogether, help them that direction for the village. I think it'd be a great thing for the village. But the connection to the sidewalk is the connection to the sidewalk somewhere. You can fix it, put us together, or you can deposit it and then trust the pathway fund to invest it the way you want it to do. If you do it this way, it's benefiting your subdivision. It is packed, you're getting full hands-on, you're in control that way. If it goes the other direction, you're writing a check and you know you could do a better job than probably somebody else, probably 3-4 times better, more cost efficient. So then it doesn't impact your, as you put it, your revenues so greatly.
Yeah, and I guess based on what John said, the only sidewalk that we could possibly add to this entire development to enhance it and increase connectivity to the village is really connecting up Brideville with Burr Ridge Parkway. I think really that's the only other thing that we could possibly do. And like I said, I guess I would be open to that if we investigated and found out there were no major conflicts and with utilities and stuff like that. But I guess, are you suggesting that we make that connection and the remainder of the sidewalk, cash in lieu of sidewalk, be waived? Or are you saying that's just a credit against the total cash in lieu of sidewalk that we'd be required to make?
That was gonna be open up for discussion next. I wanted to see what your opinion was first.
Yeah, I mean, we don't think that it does a lot to benefit the site, but we know in talking to Doug that that's eventually a cost that's gonna be incurred by the Village of Burr Ridge, because it sounds like the property to the west cannot subdivide. So you're not gonna be able to procure any cash in lieu of sidewalk from them. So eventually it's gonna be, it's gonna come out of the Burr Ridge coffers to put that sidewalk in. So like I said, I don't want it to hold up a vote tonight. I can't 100% commit to putting that sidewalk in, but if it can be discussed as sort of an either-or scenario, and we would sit down and discuss it with Doug, and we would do it if it made sense to do it in terms of there's no major conflicts of putting it in.
So you said either-or scenario, what's the
Well, I guess, like I said, this is only, I don't know how much square footage this sidewalk is, do you know?
I do not.
I think it's probably less than our overall requirement. So I guess I don't want to just do that and then,
It's 400, about 400 lineal feet.
so 2,000 square feet of sidewalk. So I think our total cash in lieu, based on the interpretation of the code, is around 14,000. So we'd be well short of that.
Right.
So I think that's a small aspect of what we're asking for tonight. I mean, does it increase connectivity? Yes. Does it benefit our subdivision? I really don't think so. And as far as the remainder, whatever remainder that is going to be required of us, I'd rather not write a check. I want to put that towards the site in terms of buffer landscaping or other improvements.
I think the thought was kind of a either or a compromise in between, was what I was hearing. I wasn't a credit toward, the total, but it's a, again, and we get it that it wasn't a line item. You assume that the money was not going to be required a cash in lieu of, and because it was approved at the Plan Commission, it was including, and also the board had agreed before that the Commonwealth development would not be completed. All right, we have the one sticking point I think is still a turnaround. That might be a Doug, has anybody ever done a fee that could be returned if the residents don't want it?
Sure, I mean, that's possible. The problem with that is it's hard to sometimes determine what the residents want and don't want, because different residents might have different opinions.
That's true, but if we asked for $30,000 for him and started digging, would we do it without asking the residents if they want it?
If that was directed by the board, yes. If the board decided you wanted that turnaround, we would do it. We would notify the residents that we're doing it before it was done, but you have no legal obligation to ask permission of the residents.
Gotcha. And just for the record, I would like to have residents' input on that little alcove down there, wooded area, kind of serene, quiet, before we start chopping down trees. Trustee Model?
Yeah, so I was gonna ask, has anyone heard from, that was my first thing. It sounds like no, we've not heard from any residents about this. And then I guess to the gentleman, again, I appreciate where you're coming from. Like we said to the last folk, you enjoy the benefit of the village, and I hear what you're saying about not necessarily directly improving this property, but I don't necessarily agree with that argument that I think when the whole village benefits, that does increase the appeal of your property and things. And as a resident who's lived here my whole life and enjoy walking all around the village and using those paths, I think it really is one of the benefits of why people come to Burr Ridge. Again, they're going to enjoy, even though they're on the Cook County side, they should enjoy relatively low taxes from the village. And, we're going to struggle to continue to fund the parkway. And you live in Burr Ridge, your family probably enjoys it too. we're gonna struggle to fund that, and in the future, we're gonna be coming to everybody for tax increases, which I'm loath to do that. I think these are the smart ways to do that. I appreciate what Trustee Snyder is saying about a compromise. I think also, though, Doug mentioned the sidewalk behind Chasemore, which while it's not directly attaching to you, for full disclosure, I do run on that loop. I complete my loop that way. That pathway is in really bad shape, and I run along frontage road where there is no sidewalk. It ends there and then starts again at the village center. So, I think both of those would be warranted to discuss, perhaps maybe putting both of those in as a compromise on the sidewalk. I think.
Actually, we've already done some research on that, and it was a pretty pricey option. It would be every bit of what we're asking for fee in lieu of sale, cash in lieu, because of the length of it and the width of it. So it's kind of off. It'd be if it was earmarked money, that might be an option.
I mean, is that if we do it or if they do it? Because their costs are probably, they're in the business here. They might be a little bit cheaper than the village doing those kind of things.
That's actually why don't you ask Paul that question?
Yeah, I guess, we looked at the total square footage of the R&R for Chasemore, and it's only a little bit less than the 14,000 that we would be required to do under our site. So as much as we would like to improve that path, it's kind of like the Commonwealth. We're not looking to get involved in something that doesn't touch and concern our property. Because I think we're just opening ourselves up for headaches. So I appreciate that suggestion. But I don't think, if the square footage was lesser, we would consider it, but
it's comparable.
It's pretty comparable, yeah.
But I can picture Paul McNaughton Way. This is.
And to address, go ahead, sorry.
Trustee Francis?
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves when we're trying to pick and choose which sidewalks need to be replaced or repaired or installed. I think we have a pathway commission that are experts at doing that, and we should leave that judgment to them. Have them make the recommendation, have them do the studies, have them do the analysis, and then make the recommendations to the board so that we can make a final decision. So I appreciate, though, that I agree with about the asphalt pathway behind Chasemore. It's in poor shape. There's other pathways that are in poor shape, asphalt pathways that are in poor shape also. But our pathway commission knows which ones are in most dire need and which ones are in more dire need to be repaired or replaced. So should we accept a cash donation in lieu of sidewalks from this developer, we should let the pathway commission do their job and determine which ones need to be replaced.
Yeah, and I can see that, and then we don't mean to circumvent their opinions, but it was in the spirit of a positive spirit, and that it was in the same corporate park. It would be within walking distance, it would, and besides that, Trustee Model runs on that path, so it was.
Walk that path too, so.
So, do you, something else, Trustee Gonzalo?
I appreciate all the work you've put into it and just bringing these new homes to our community. And I know a lot of people who are looking forward to buying these properties. But I feel that any sidewalk which connects your subdivision to the rest of the village is actually a great selling point, because you see these ads that 5 minutes walk to the village center or whatever. So I would look at it as, it's going to help your residents, and it would be in lieu of the other sidewalks that you would build. So I think we need to kind of talk to the Pathways Commission and see what would make more sense. And
just so you understand it, we feel like that we're already providing maximum connectivity with pathways in this subdivision. There's no sidewalks that aren't being installed that could increase your connectivity.
To the village, the one that goes through Bridle Path?
Well, except, like we said,
Right.
except for that,
Okay.
which is only 2,000 square feet. Right. But I don't know how many people walk down Burridge Parkway at that location.
If you had a nice sidewalk, people are really into walking these days, so it's a good thing. And running, as Trustee Michael said.
Well, any other questions of them?
Trustee Francine made a real good comment. Over the years, the Pathway Commission's done a real good job in developing and maintaining various pathways, and they've been able to do this with the cash donations in lieu of sidewalks. Most developers, I know in Borough Glen South, where I was for years, it was designed to have sidewalks, but nobody wanted them, you know, so the money was used for something else. I mean, that's been common through all our subdivisions. And I believe right now, like you said, whether it's Commonwealth or this street or that street, I think the best thing to do is put the money in as a donation to the Pathway Fund and let them work on which should be the best way to fund the sidewalks or the pathways in that area.
Is there any consideration for in lieu of using the cash for sidewalks, using the cash for a tangible benefit that these residents are going to experience on site?
It don't work out. In my years on the board, I found out this works out. You know, why put money in here? We put more trees. It's subjective on what is really done. So this way we know it's being done.
I think.
And now, the only other thing I have, I'll make a comment on it, on the turnaround. The way the street is developed in the turnaround, if there's no argument with the fire department like they did on Highland Fields, I don't see why we have to, you know, make an excess you know, width on the turnaround.
And I know, I mean, Village Administrator Pollock has been around for a long time. I mean, and this street has been in the way it has been for a very long time, and I don't think you've received any complaints.
Trustee Francis?
Well, original intent of this street was to connect south all the way to Arbor Drive. Now, if you go down to Arbor Drive, that does have a turnaround in it. And that turnaround was installed subsequent to Arbor Drive being built. So this connection will never be made. So no school bus can go down that road. No snowplow can go down the road without having to back out, and no fire truck can go down that road without having to back out as well. And that's a safety consideration for all the residents on Commonwealth and the residents that back up to that Commonwealth Drive from your development as well.
Well, I guess I don't know what the consensus is yet, obviously, and part of my job is to kind of gauge that and figure out where we're at. I guess I understand the benefit of having the sidewalk fund and being able to improve projects like Chase Moore as you need it. So I guess at this point, I would ask the village board to consider allowing us to pay cash in lieu of sidewalk for the outer loop of the street, and then have no cash in lieu and no improvements done to Commonwealth. We don't want to have anything to do with Commonwealth. Our nearest construction to Commonwealth is 50 foot away. Our nearest house is 100 foot away from Commonwealth. We just don't want to get involved in something. You know, the other aspect of it, where's the turnaround? Or do we have the turnaround, is that going to be partially on our property then too, John?
It would be primarily on your property.
So primarily on our property, then we have an easement over that for access, and then who maintains that? I just think it opens up way too many questions. And the construction of it, I could just hear the calls now. You snapped my sprinkler line. You spidered my driveway. You know, why do you always have construction traffic down there? We're nowhere near that street. We don't want to have anything to do with it. And I don't think the homeowners want us to have anything to do with it either. And I just think to make us pay for sidewalks on Commonwealth, when everyone understands that there's no improvements being requested on sidewalks or on Commonwealth, I don't think that's right. You know, the code is, you know, it's in the code, but it was understood at preliminary approvals that we're not doing any improvements along Commonwealth. So to come back and say, now you owe us cash in lieu for an improvement that we agreed you were never going to do, it's not right. And I'm going to hold my tongue a little bit. But,
Well, you know, thank you for that. I want to have that was great final comments, I assume.
Yeah.
If you would be seated, we're going to move back to the board, but we do have one resident that also wants to jump in before we move back to the board for final discussion. So thank you very much for your input. Now we have a resident that would like to mention something or add to it.
Mark Thomas, 7515 Drew. Mayor, you pointed it out, Commonwealth Avenue is very difficult to navigate. So I think we have a golden opportunity here to do something. It might be too late, depending on how everything was decided prior to this meeting. But one thing I'd like to point out to everyone is we granted a PUD. And the PUD, if I remember correctly, the wording in it is that we should get something that benefits the community as a whole. So when you're talking about sidewalks or enhancements just to your subdivision, well, even though it's going to the sidewalk committee or whatnot, that's the community as a whole. You know, that's not just them. So that's one comment I wanted to make, and the other one is, yes, we granted a PUD. We gave an exception. The minimum requirement was 40 acres, and they're approximately 20. So we've already made an exception there. We've done a lot. We've given a lot. So I think we should get something in return. Thank you.
No.
I think it just goes back to the point of our understanding, the village got what they were supposed to get at the preliminary approval. They got a $200,000 bridge over that lake. They got the rest of the sidewalk around the lake. So that's what they got.
And point of clarification, what's the minimum acreage for a PUD?
40.
For an R, it varies by zoning district, but in an R5 PUD, we lowered it to 20 acres with this development. For an R3 PUD, it's 40 acres, and in different zoning districts.
So it's not just, okay. At the board, open discussion. Trustee Schiappa?
Well, I think Burridge is getting a benefit of this PUD. We're getting 40 additional homes, 40 additional tax bills, 40 additional families that are going to shop in the village center and become part of our community. Waited 40 years for an opportunity like this, and I think we need to, that's what's unique is the spot around in the industrial area. So I think it's something that we should all remember and consider during our discussion.
Trustee Snyder?
Listening to both sides, I mean, the turnaround, you know, do I agree with the turnaround or not? The residents say one thing, I can live without the turnaround in my opinion. Never from the beginning, I understand the discussion with the McNaughtons, they stated we thought this was blank. But if you had it in writing, it's easy. It's not. Discussion in the past, there's never been in the past we waived that totally. There's got to be some consideration. I appreciate the fact that we're building a bridge and we're doing that, but that's part of to make the subdivision what it is so that you can charge what you want to make the homes worthwhile for the village, which is great. I'm willing to listen to what, maybe if they come back to staff and sit down with Doug again and Evan and go through like what consideration, both ways to make it fair. We get a great subdivision, they get to build it, and we get something for the, write a check, put it to the pathway, and as the trustees have stated, let it to the pathway foundation or pathway committee do their job.
And that was, pardon me, I think I heard it correctly, though, the request or the compromise seems to be that nothing regarding Commonwealth, but paying for the outer loop of the inner sidewalks.
Correct. Something.
And do you have an amount for that?
I believe the internal loop was $40,000, am I correct?
Yeah, it's probably a little more than that. It's
Right.
10,000 square feet, or is it? Yeah, I think it's about 10,000 square feet. We pay about $5.50 a foot for a sidewalk. So.
I'm going to go in chronological order or numerical, whatever, sequential order.
Seating order.
Counterclockwise.
Okay, anything else else, trustee Center? So that's the, possible compromise in view of all the kind of starts and stops and 12th hour here and the unknown about the Bridewell thing. And that way the village can make that decision themselves if they want to do that. Trustee McCall?
In all fairness, I mean, I think they're doing a very good job by bringing these 44 new homes to our village. I do feel that if any of these roads or pathways need to be repaired, we don't want to do this and then have that bill a few years down the road. So I really feel that input from the Pathways Commission would be very valuable at this point before we kind of make a final decision to see, what needs to be taken care of or what their input is. And then maybe we'll come up with.
Back to the board, Paul, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Then maybe we'll come back with, a combination of a donation and what we can have added as far as sidewalks are concerned.
Well, that would be up to Pathway, because if it was just a cash in lieu of the outer loop, that would be up to the Pathway Commission, so it wouldn't be decided tonight.
Right, but, right, so that's no.
Good clarification, I think. Trustee Beza?
When I look at this, with the comments that are made here today, two things that I look at. One, the Plan Commission gave certain conditions under which they approved this. And one of them, like almost all other subdivisions, the sidewalks are somehow worked on a little later or agreed that they don't want to put them all in. And in the past, every one of these subdivisions that have been put up, if the work that is being done on all the sidewalks that are necessary to go into the subdivision, and the contractor don't want to put them all in, he basically donates to the Pathway Commission, which has handled our pathways, and if there's a problem on Commonwealth or any of the streets around that, I'm sure they would work with the homeowners association or the contractor on developing how to handle the money. So my personal feeling is that there should be a donation to the Pathway Commission for the sidewalks that they're not putting in. And the biggest thing that I worry about is if we don't do it. I can't remember any other subdivisions going in where we've completely let them go. So I would be extremely worried about setting a precedent.
Okay. Trustee Model?
I just want to point out the irony tonight has become sidewalk night and perhaps the coldest, snowiest meeting of the year that we've had, but it's funny that we're talking sidewalks this time of year, but time is of the essence, and I understand that you gentlemen want to get started here. Money is valuable, but so is time. But to me, there's two separate things here. It sounds like they're amendable to paying cash for sidewalks, and then you have the Commonwealth Avenue thing here. There's two things to be discussed. So I'm in favor of leaving Commonwealth as is, getting some cash in lieu of sidewalks for the commission, and also having them complete the small amount of sidewalk that we talked was a little bit along the frontage road so it connects over to Village Center Drive. To me, that's a little extra consideration for Commonwealth as opposed to, letting that go by the wayside, so to speak.
And just for comparison's sake, remind us, how long is that sidewalk from Bridewell to Burridge Parkway?
About 400 feet.
And how long is Commonwealth?
1,400.
Okay, good comparison. Okay. Trustee Francis?
Thank you. So, I've said this before, but we're sometimes known as a community of subdivisions and as opposed to a village. Pathways and sidewalks are mainly for connecting residents on an informal basis, allows residents to get to the village center, get to other subdivisions, get to parks. So I'm very much a supporter of the Pathway and the Pathway Commission and the fine work that they do. I can understand I agree with not putting a sidewalk in on Commonwealth Avenue. I agree with the developer on that point, but I would like to see the cash donated in lieu of that. I did attend the Plan Commission meeting where the sidewalks were discussed at length. The internal sidewalk, the external sidewalk within the loop, the carriage sidewalks. Now, had this been a development of, say, 30 homes and not 44 homes, well, those homes on the east side of the subdivision would have been pushed further, could have been pushed further to the west. There'd be less homes in the internal loop, and sidewalks could have been put on the external loop of the private street. But this is the arrangement that works for you. So the Plan Commission is opposed to carriage sidewalks, worked out a compromise by allowing the sidewalk on the internal portion of the loop. So there was a compromise made there already. A compromise has been made on not requiring Commonwealth to be brought up to village standard. And I would ask staff to go back to Falling Waters, because this is very similar to Falling Waters, where Madison Avenue, was that upgraded when Falling Waters was put in? Because there's homes that border Madison.
I'm not sure.
I can't remember.
What was done.
Okay, that was
Even before my
late
time.
80s. That was late 80s. So, but that Madison Avenue has been allowed to retain a rural character. So, it's been done in the past. We have an opportunity here to correct a safety situation on Commonwealth. If the residents were out here in force, all 8 of them, property owners were vehemently opposed to it, I wouldn't suggest it, but there's been no discussion either way. So I'd say we go ahead with the turnaround. It's the Plan Commission's recommendation, and I support the recommendation. If there's resident opposition, I'd like to hear it. The question of staff. We're not showing the pathway improvements around the lake on this site plan, nor the bridge. And there's been, it was also discussed at the Plan Commission meeting about a connection between the pathway on the east side of the lake to 73rd Place, and that's not being shown either. What drawing will those be shown on?
It'll be shown on their final plat as well as their final engineering. This was their second submittal,
Okay.
and they know.
So it'll
They
be
know
shown in
that.
the final path that's approved by the board. Very good, thank you. When Savoy Club came before us, and certain things were shown in the final plat, and then the village had to finish those certain items because they were shown in the plat, they were finished and drawn in the letter of credit. So, okay, glad to hear that. Savoy Club, a good comparison. Sidewalks on both sides of the street. Improvements were made that did not directly benefit the development, but were required, such as a left turn lane off of 79th Street. Sidewalks extended on 79th Street as well, and other enhancements within. So, that's, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Model?
I'd
Final
like to make
comments?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to propose that we get cash in lieu of sidewalks for the internal loop area there, and that for allowing them relief of Commonwealth Avenue for sidewalks or the turnaround, that they complete the sidewalk along Frontage Road going to Village Center for roughly 400 linear feet.
Okay, so do you want him to repeat that motion?
Yes.
So I'm proposing that we get cash in lieu of sidewalks for the internal exception that we're allowing, which was approximately, rough numbers, what, 40 grand or something, Doug, was that?
50 grand, probably.
Maybe more, 50, something for the, something, you work out the exact math, that it's, somewhere around 40 to 50 grand for the cash, in lieu of sidewalks. That would go to the Planning Commission for the inner loop. And then we relieve them of their obligations on Commonwealth Avenue for a turnaround or sidewalks or cash in lieu in sidewalks, and instead have them complete the roughly 400 linear feet of sidewalk along Frontage Road, which would get it right to the Village Center Drive there.
Get
Okay.
May I ask, can you reword that to be a motion to approve the resolution as submitted with those added conditions?
Thank you. Yes, I will amend my
Second.
motion.
Everything then.
Thank you.
Here, a second?
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there, any discussion?
Trustee Ronald, in regards to the turnaround, is that something you want in that?
No, I'm proposing that we relieve them of the obligation to put in a turnaround as well as put in sidewalks on Commonwealth. I heard their case that they're not doing anything over there.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
So in exchange for that, I am proposing that they do complete the sidewalk in front of the
The
place.
400
On frontage road there, yeah.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion before this is voted on? Trustee Francis?
I think we're setting a dangerous precedent here about reducing our impact fees for developments. We haven't done it in the past. We're doing it now. And every developer that comes before us in the future will ask the same thing and find a reason why they don't have to pay. And I'm sure there's valid reasons out there. But the reason that they shouldn't have to put a sidewalk on Commonwealth in because they're not touching Commonwealth, well, if they put a turnaround in Commonwealth, they are touching Commonwealth. But we're relieving them of the responsibility of upgrading Commonwealth. We've already granted them that. And now we're granting them more. I don't think that's fair to the other residents and the other developers, the other 60-some subdivisions in this village that have paid those fees.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes. Trustee, I had that same conversation with Doug earlier this evening. And in his statement was, we get to, as a board, we can review each thing on its own.
Sure.
When someone else, if I'm a developer and I come to this board and I ask for something, and they ask about my subdivision, we can address it. That was then, this is now. So, I following your point, but that's why I already followed up with it with Douglas earlier. Thank you.
Trustee Vitale?
Maybe they can put the gazebo, so for the portion that we're waiving, if that's what it appears to be, in lieu of the Commonwealth, they were saying they were gonna enhance the property, put a gazebo and all that stuff, maybe they can do that in addition to what Trustee Model said. Where the property is a much better,
Yeah, then we're not getting, well, that'd be nice to keep on adding things like that, and it'd really be a nice gesture. We're getting closer to no compromise at all. With the original number of 100,000, so, but point taken, they can amend their motion should they choose to? Anybody choose to change your motion?
I'm not at this moment, no. I think it was, there was some confusion. Perhaps it was their fault, but Commonwealth, there was some confusion, so I understand where they're coming.
Okay, Trustee.
Question I have. We're talking about giving here and giving there and changing this and changing that. From what I understand, and going through the original paperwork, once it was approved by the Plan Commission, as a PUD, we gave them quite a bit of things already. And now we're talking, well, maybe 40,000 in sidewalk donation, when originally it should have been close to 100,000. So I gotta agree.
Actually, it's closer to 70,000, because this will be about 50,000.
Why did they put 100,000 in the backup paperwork then?
I mean, but on the motion, it includes about 70,000. There's about 50,000 for the inner loop and about 20,000 for the 400 feet going to the corner. So it's a total of about 70 versus 100 would be the compromise.
Is that right, Doug?
Well,
I don't know.
yeah, those numbers are very, very approximate and probably low. They testified that there's, would you say 10,000 square feet for the outer loop, $5 to $5.50 a square foot, that's $50,000 to $55,000. The Commonwealth Avenue is about 1,400 linear feet, and I think I had estimated that at 5 foot wide, $5 a square foot. That's was $60,000 to $70,000. So their required sidewalks that they aren't building is a minimum of $100,000. It's probably quite a bit more than that in actuality. the off-site section on frontage road is about, is 400 lineal feet of sidewalk at $25 a foot. So that's $20,000 or more. So yeah, your numbers are approximately correct.
Okay. Okay. A motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Well, what's exactly the motion?
So my motion again was to amend the ordinance, correct, Doug? To get cash in lieu of sidewalk for the inner loop, which it sounds like you'll have to do the numbers, but it could be about 50 grand. Am I correct, for the inner loop that they're getting out of? And then allowing them to, at their expense, at their construction, complete the sidewalk along frontage road, which goes from about 71st Street over to Village Center Drive, all along frontage road. Finish that link, not just in front of theirs, but the whole connection. And then do nothing further on Commonwealth Avenue from their perspective. No sidewalk, no fee there, and no turnaround at the end.
Okay. Trustee Francis?
One more point. They're also going to ask us for more relief, more considerations with the school donation. They want to pay the school donation one permit at a time as opposed to a lump sum like we've requested all other developers. So there's another consideration they're going to be asking for when we're done talking about Commonwealth and the sidewalks.
We don't have a lot more subdivisions coming in Burr Ridge. Am I correct?
That's correct.
We're probably not going to have this discussion for a while, if ever. I mean, depending on what happens in the village. There's not a lot of land left, right?
One or two more.
And this was an unusual piece of land that I think we're making something of it that will benefit all of us.
The consideration's done, but with regarding the pay-as-we-go, we're public, they're private sector. You write the check for the school and be done. I don't want to be a partner, and I don't want to wait for my fees as a village when it comes to the school.
I don't want to talk about that tonight either.
Right, it's on the agenda.
Got enough issues.
I thought we
Yes,
were
it
talking
is.
about the side, well, we'll get to that then after we have this discussion, but to me, these are separate issues.
They are separate issues, but I'm just,
Right.
my point was that they're going to be asking for more relief.
Well, just to be clear, the resolution includes that they would pay school impact fees with each permit. So if you don't want to approve that, you need to change your motion.
That wasn't clear to me, okay, well, in which case, then I'll further amend my motion if the second will allow it, that they pay their fees in full the way the other ones were for the school. I wasn't intending to allow that. I thought we were talking about the sidewalks.
Mayor, I'd like to speak.
I'll second that.
Now, regarding the school impact fees, if you remember, this subdivision was going to be an age-restricted subdivision where we weren't going to have any impact to schools whatsoever because at least 90% of the residents had to be 55 or older. We haven't gone through with that, but it's still an age-targeted development. Every single home in the subdivision is going to have a master on the first floor. Again, while we're not age-restricted, we're still, based on our analysis, we're going to comply with those age-restricted numbers. About 90% of our residents are not going to have, they're going to be empty nesters. There's not going to be any children in these houses. There's not going to be any school impact. I know that you think we're asking for relief here, but you talk to my father, he thinks that we should have asked for no school impact fees to be paid here because we're not impacting the schools at all. We're agreeing to pay school impact fees at building permit. We will post a letter of credit in the full amount of the school impact fees. So if for some reason the development doesn't work, we go under, you guys have a letter of credit from a financial institution, you guys can go collect those impact fees right away. One thing that maybe is not understood as a developer, we have to buy the land, we have to develop the land, we have to build 3 models, then we have to build all the houses, and that's before we collect a dime. To saddle us with another $300,000 or $400,000 of impact fees at the start of the development, you're making it impracticable to ever develop a subdivision in Burr Ridge of this magnitude. And I know you said there's not going to be many more, but developers are not going to want to come to Burr Ridge and pay that kind of money up front when they have their land acquisition costs, their land development costs, their model home costs. And that's even before they sign a contract and get started on a home that they're building for somebody else. So respectfully, I request that We pay our school impact fees at building permit, and we will submit a letter of credit to cover the entire amount of the school impact fees when we submit our letter of credit, which will be this week, hopefully.
Mayor, I'd just like to, from staff's perspective, I don't think we have any objection to them paying the school fees as they go along. And quite frankly, I don't, the school district would probably rather have their money up front, but this is found money to them. It's not like their budget is depending on them getting this money all at once. A lot of villages do it that way anyway. We've never done it that way. We've always done it up front because it's easier, quite frankly. But, I have no objection whatsoever to them posting a letter of credit, like Mr. McNaughton said, and paying it as each permit is issued.
Trustee Francis?
Yeah, I agree with staff. I wouldn't require them to pay that all up front either. And that's a cost savings to them. They don't have to extend themselves out that kind of money, maybe borrow it, I don't know. So that's a cost savings. But in return for that generosity, I think we should have some sidewalk considerations.
And
What, Doug, in regards to his motion, how would you change it or modify it?
I would require the cash in lieu of, a donation in lieu of constructing a sidewalk along Commonwealth and the internal sidewalk as well. What our code requires, what our ordinance requires.
Okay.
And let the Pathway Commission decide if they want to extend the sidewalk from the entrance of this subdivision to Burridge Parkway along Bridewell Drive, South Frontage Road, or if they want to improve somewhere else.
See, a modification like that, it gets passed.
As well, I don't know if it would pass without it or not, but I think that, I'm willing to, I didn't know much about the school, fee. I hear what you say about paying it over time. I hear what they're saying. So, I'm willing to amend on that, but again, I don't know if there's other trustees that want to propose something different. I think that's a pretty heavy lift. The financing costs of your $300,000 are not 50 grand or, whatever your financing costs are going to be for that, and that's your business. You guys know your business and you know how it works and stuff. So, that's a cost, but I'm not opposed to allowing them to pay over time as we talk with the letter of credit. I have no thoughts on what the trade-off would be, if any, for that.
well, I would say this has been an interesting discussion all night, and something I've been thinking about since 2 o'clock this morning. I listened to the pros and cons of this, and I think a couple things kept on ringing in my head about Burr Ridge, a very special place, and we are a very special place, but I don't know that we always are very special to developers, and I cannot vote on this unless it's a tie. Just the idea of cash in lieu of a project that we don't want to have built, but we want the money anyway. I mean, I'm just not talking about anything done in the past. I'm talking about this one in particular. I have a hard time with cash, and we're going to pay for a sidewalk that's proposed to pay for a sidewalk on Commonwealth, which we don't want and the residents don't want, and to ask them to pay cash in lieu of because that's the way it is, and not make any other further consideration for it, I think is getting further away from a very special place. I think we've made a lot of progress tonight. We've been talking about this for over an hour, and it's I think somewhere in between. I think that they've agreed to reach to and pay it, and then the idea of paying that plus the 400 feet is already more than they already agreed. I really think that it comes time to vote on this one way or the other, and to move on, and also keep in mind that the scope of this project, and and the benefits to the overall village, and the benefits to the school that's going to benefit from without any impact whatsoever, except for their grandchildren. So I think it's a, yes. Trustee
So,
Model?
thank you for that, and thank you, Trustee Francis and Doug, for your comments that, I wasn't aware that it would probably be fine to pay it over time. So I would amend my motion if the second agrees to allow them to pay their permits over time, and subject to the other things that we talked about already with the sidewalk in front and the cash in lieu of sidewalk for the internal loop. So if Trustee Schiappa agrees, I would amend my motion to allow them to post the letter of credit, as they said, and pay the school impact fees over time.
Second.
Okay.
And what would the cash allowance be about?
Well, we said it's approximately $50,000 plus completing the sidewalk in
400
front.
square feet, the 400 linear feet.
400 feet of
Linear
sidewalk
feet,
in front,
yeah.
right.
Which is, roughly half or more than half of the original proposal, and it's somewhere in between. It's a tremendous benefit to the village.
Let's them get
And-
moving.
so,
Right.
We have a motion, we have a second, I'm going to call the vote.
Trustee Model.
Yes.
Trustee Skiappa.
Yes.
Trustee Snyder.
Yes.
Trustee Mytal.
Yes.
Trustee Paveza.
Yes.
Trustee Francis.
No.
5-1.
Motion passes 5-1.
We look forward to this process. Good job.
Thanks. And also thanks to you and your father, McNaughton Way, I still like that idea. Trustee Francis?
We're going to talk about their park. That was also on the agenda.
That was,
Well, that was part of the resolution, and the motion included approval of the resolution with the amendments.
Okay. So I guess we didn't talk about it.
Yeah, I didn't know that was gonna be included in the resolution.
I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear. I thought I stated that up front, that I was identifying these two issues that I knew were of concern to the developer, and if there were any other issues in the resolution or in the write-up, that, please bring those to our attention.
And so with the park, I'm reading what we just approved. Is there concern?
But what was approved was that they will dedicate a park, build a park. If the park district will take it, it'll become a park district park. If the park district won't take it,
Homeowners Association.
our subdivision ordinance allows a private park with a public access easement, and they would still dedicate the park, build the park, but instead of, if the park district doesn't want it, then the homeowners association will have
It's
the
a
responsibility. but it'll be-
win-win.
Yeah, I understood that, and I'm fine with it.
Okay,
I didn't know if somebody else had another opinion.
Trustee Francis?
No, I agree with that. Parks are very valuable assets to our village, and we appreciate that you're building that park. Whether the park district, Pleasant Hill Park District accepts it or not, who knows? But it'll benefit certainly your residents and the surrounding residents. The Savoy Club Park is a perfect example. When we fought for that, the developer told us, no, nobody will ever visit it. I see people there all the time, winter, summer, year-round, and it's a great asset.
And one more reason for that sidewalk to be finished to Burridge Parkway, so anybody from the
But the reason,
come over.
I brought it up because I didn't know how the other trustees felt about the park, and whether they wanted to wait to hear from the Pleasant Hill Park District or what they wanted to do. That's why I mentioned it. We didn't talk about it at all, so.
Thank you. Good luck. Other considerations? For announcement, deliberation, enter discussion?
Mayor.
Pardon?
8C.
Oh, I'm sorry, 8C was removed. Approval recommendation to ratify emergency purchase of contractual services for water main repairs. Trustee Francis, remove that. Trustee?
First of all, I want to commend Public Works staff, Public Works employees, and the contractor that assisted with those difficult repairs in late December, early January during that cold snap we had, working all hours, day and night, to make those repairs so that our residents can continue to have safe drinking water. With that being said, during the 18-day cold snap last December and early January, there were 13 water main breaks according to the data that was furnished. In 2017, there were 29 water main breaks, 42% above the 17-year average of 20.4 water main breaks. So we're increasing. We have already had 8 water main breaks this year so far in 2018. So as our water distribution system continues to age, we can expect more breaks, more expense, not less. So I'm making a suggestion here that when the water committee meets later this month, that they seriously consider water rates that will allow for a fund to be built up which would accommodate these more frequent and more costly infrastructure repairs to our water main, to our water distribution system. And with that being said, I make a motion to approve the $60,734.25 expense for emergency water main repairs.
I'll second that, but one comment. The Water Committee started looking at it last year on how, whether, in fact, I think that was one of the comments we made to Dave, is the biggest problem is the carriageway. And do we take time and redo it all, or do we repay for the breakage? And right now, it's cheaper to do the breakage than to get in there and do it. And also, in the Illinois Magazine, if you look at the Illinois Magazine, that's one of the biggest problems and cost of villages throughout the state is busted water mains. So we're not unique.
This winter it was carriageway, next winter it'll be somewhere else. Right. So I consider.
We are looking at that and where to draw the line.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Paveza?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Mytel?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Skiappa? Yes. 6-0.
Motion passes 6-0. Under G, other considerations for announcement, deliberation, and or discussion. No official action will be taken. That probably, Trustee Francis?
Yes, thank you. So I drive past the Pace parking lot occasionally at 5 p.m., stopping at Brookhaven Foods on the way home from work. And the lot is completely full. Cars are parked in the aisleways. They're also parked on both sides of the entryway. Now, this is a great problem to have because I counted 20 extra cars that had no spaces that they could park in. We have talked about Pace having Pace expand that lot to accommodate their increase in business. Have we contacted them recently about this? Because it's a safety hazard coming in and out. It's only one lane with cars on both sides of the entryway, one lane to get in and out. And so if someone is coming the other way, you have to back out down a curved entryway.
Yes, coincidentally, I sent them an email last week asking them about that, but I haven't gotten a response. The previous email I had from them was from last fall, where they said they were hoping to start construction in the spring, and they knew they had to go through an approval process with the village, and they didn't do that, so they're not starting in the spring because they have no plan approved. But so I sent them an email saying, asking for an update, but I haven't gotten a response back. I'll try to put something in the Friday memo when I find
May I recommend a certified letter?
Sure.
Those emails sometimes get lost, or staff or people leave. It's time to move on that. Point well taken.
We'll
nice problem to have. I remember 4 or 5 years ago we were trying to encourage usage of the Pace bus, and now it's
Well, it's really taken off since they've allowed the buses to drive on the shoulder of the expressways, and it's a great asset to our village.
It's
connected.
Upgrade the buses, and
I should add, Deputy Chief Loftus is here, but I should add, not that he's here, but I should add that when they do park illegally in the public right-of-way, we have given them tickets before, and we will continue to do that.
Well, I hate to punish the end
When
users
it's on
because
private property, we ignore it, but when it presents a safety issue, they're blocking the sidewalk or,
oh, sure.
Then we
Well,
have
the
to take
sidewalk is
action.
different, but you hate to punish the users when Pace might be a little slow to respond to this increased demand.
Can they run the plates, make sure it's a Burr Ridge resident, and see if it's a Burr Ridge resident and not? Just saying. Okay.
Thank you.
Trustee Francis, are these like parked cars or for pickup?
Park cars.
Park cars.
Park cars are all day.
Wow.
Quite popular. And they also upgraded the buses to be with Corinthian leather.
Ooh.
Or feels like leather at least, leather. And the nice bus. I remember when they were launched. Good point. Okay. Going back to residents' comments, we had a resident at the beginning mentioned you want to come back to the microphone and just as a matter of the way we like to run these board meetings, it's not a town hall meeting, so we don't get off track in the beginning. We come here to do village business first, then we listen to complaints like this second. I will tell you that I'll answer only one part of it because I have nothing to do with the other part, and that is, there was I apologize for campaign signs being around this weekend for a couple days because apparently I have some supporters out there that we know that the person that's been attacking the village was in town. It was kind of a statement to them to stop, kind of help defend the village. Because they're not defending, just like the board, they're not defending one person. They're defending 11,000 residents in our property values. So they got a little bit out of control with the signs. I'm trying to pick all those up, et cetera. But that was a reason for that. As far as anything regarding village's actions, that's totally up to a board member needs to address that because I have nothing to do with it. Trustee Paveza?
Well, none of this would have happened or started as far as any political rhetoric if Durkin and his friends or his pack just left the village out of their literature. I mean, what started me on this is before Christmas, I was at a luncheon, and my friends from Lamont put two of these things in front of me and said, hey, what's going on? I thought you people in Burr Ridge had things under control. I said, we do. Not according to this. And then between the next 3 weeks over the holidays, all of us have heard from residents and people wanting to know what's going on. I mean, when you get hammered 2-3 of these a week, knocking the village, it's not right. And it's outright lies. And that's why the letter, we got together, we sent a letter out to the people that supported Durkin and asked them to stop and apologize. And if we were wrong, we invited them to come to the village. And we were gonna take them to court. In our discussion, one of the meetings, the mayor recused himself and I handled the meeting, and Trustee Franzi made the comment, well, maybe we've got several in the mail and none of them recommended to, or had anything to do with the village, so we let it go. And now it's starting again. I got one yesterday. Sent residents money to a sanctuary city. Well, they got a little note too. And two had to do with us paying our water bill to Bedford Park. Now, we've been buying water from Bedford Park for over 20 years. I called Bedford Park up and asked them if they were a sanctuary city. They said, what? They couldn't believe it. I said, well, according to this, we're sending our money to a sanctuary city. I mean, it's outright lies. Higher taxes. Actually, I think the letter says in detail, our taxes went down 25%. Our budgets are bad. Trustee Model made a great description and made the comment that if our representatives read and knew how to handle a budget better, maybe the state of Illinois wouldn't be in the problem that they're in. Just like this, enacted budgets, he puts a little note, minus $175,000. When we print our budgets, we print everything. There's nothing to hide. Now, if he would have looked, the very next line tells you how we paid for that $175,000. Every one of the last 4-year budgets, not only were they balanced, but we had a slight surplus. So, you know, for me and a lot of trustees that spend a lot of time really making this village that special place, when you see this stuff week after week after week, hammering and lies, every one of them's a total lie, you get disgusted.
Well, I understand that, and it's, that's disturbing, but the fact that it's, well, a bunch of the stuff is true when you take, you know, the budgets, the projected budgets, but then we have our village administrator, does a great job, finagles things through the year, and we end up with a surplus at the end of the year. We've always done that. We've turned out great. And so I can understand that. But what I'm getting at is we get involved in a legal process between these two people, and they're going to quote their numbers, we're going to quote our numbers, and they're both legitimate sources. I mean, the one ad said 16% increase. Well, they were looking at the tax levies, I'm sure. So we always ask for like 5% or whatnot for tax levies. So they looked at it over a term.
Yeah, but they said we had the increase, not that we asked for it.
Right. Well, we voted on the increase, but we didn't get that increase. We never do. So but what I'm getting at is we go to court for something like that at our expense, the residents in the village, and there's no way we could win anything like that.
Well,
it's just going to cost us money.
We didn't go to court.
Yeah.
Because if we would
But
go,
anyway.
the attorney is pro bono. And
Well-
we haven't gone that way yet.
But the other problem that we, the one thing that I look at that's totally ridiculous is, you're saying it's slanderous to the village, that it's hurting our property values and whatnot. Who is going to base a decision on a business, buying a home in the village off a political ad? Especially these, they're so ridiculous. So,
A lot of people
We
believe
can't
this,
answer that,
that's why we did it, because residents are asking us about it. They're saying, what's going on with all of this?
well, I'm afraid I have to disagree with that, because
Okay, that's good, but
the people in my neighborhood,
Ask
we
and
sit
answer.
there and we
Ask
talk
and
about
answer.
these things, we laugh at them, and they all know. They're in touch with the community, they know what's going on.
thank you.
So
There's information online that addresses all these questions.
Right.
If anyone has any question about our finances, the facts are online, and probably doesn't need any more discussion here tonight.
But I just think it's crazy to try to defend something that's undefendable.
Thank you.
Trustee Model?
I think our reputation is always defendable, and it's always important to defend your reputation no matter what. And I think that, the candidate chose to start this, picking on the village. He should have left the village out of it, like Trustee Paveza said. Like he also said, we've decided to defer legal action at this time, but we might, review it again if this stuff continues. But if we do something, it is pro bono, so there will be no cost to the residents. We have an attorney from the village who's offered to represent us on that. And, again, I don't know who makes decisions on these things, but your reputation is intangible, it's precious, and once it's damaged, it's very hard to get it back. So I think it's important for us to put the facts out here, and certainly we are not engaging in any political activity. If it gets picked up because it's a public comment, this is a public meeting, everything we've said here could be used by either candidate, in the future, and I would hope that they won't misrepresent the facts anymore and spread any more slanderous lies that aren't true about the village. I would hope that they will stick to the facts and attack each other and leave the municipality out of it if that's going to be the case going forward. So.
Yeah, but the only problem I have with it is I feel that the village and the residents are being used in this political
Couldn't agree
battle.
with you more.
And we should not be.
We should not be.
We
I
should not be at
agree
all.
with you.
And I think anything that is done by us, the board, is just making this grow, making this problem larger.
Thank you.
Anything else? President's comments section is over. Any reports and communications from village officials? Trustee Schiappa?
I just wanted to commend Public Works Director David Pressig and the Public Works Department for all of the work that was done this past weekend in keeping our streets clean and safe. My wife went out during the day, I can't remember when, on Saturday, and when she came back, she told me what a relief it was to come back into Burridge where our streets are clean and safe. So thank you to David and the Public Works Department. I saw nothing but trucks all weekend trying to keep up with this torrential snowstorm. A great job.
Anybody else?
Just one more comment. The Secretary of State's office will be here the middle of March again, so if you've got any Secretary of State business, I think the second or third Wednesday in March. It'll be posted online, and we'll mention the exact date and time at our next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay. Any non-residents like to address the board this time? Seeing no one? All right, I'll need a motion to go into closed session to discuss the approval of closed session minutes of January 22nd, 2018.
So moved.
And discussion, and B, discussion regarding employment of employee.
Second.
So moved. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, The open meeting is officially closed, and the closed